We are now going to look at the stage direction of movement in An Inspector Calls, and it is very interesting that as a play, there is very little actual physical movement in the play mentioned in the stage directions. But what is actually quite interesting is that where there is movement, there seems to be a pattern of movement amongst the male characters. And I'm going to talk about this now, and I want you to see if you can pick up the pattern that Priestley creates with the movement he does. So, the first stage direction is in Act 1, towards the end, where Gerald has just become aware that the woman in question is in fact the very same Daisy Renton that he knew and associated with. His response is to show how rocked he is by this news, and the direction begins with him pulling himself together. That's the first short one. And then he says to Sheila, "Do you mind if I give myself a drink, Sheila?" And it's at this point, and here's the stage direction you need. Sheila merely nods, still staring at him, and he goes across to the Tantalus on the sideboard for a whiskey. Now, the Tantalus was the place where they housed the alcoholic beverages. It was that place in which you would have an array of drink. He, as a go-to, has gone straight to the alcohol. He is attempting to deal with this revelation, not in the responsible way of firming his decision and conscious responses for when he's going to be spoken to, but rather to escape and try and mitigate that feeling he has at the moment and balance that with the drink. And that by itself might not be anything unusual, but let us just remember he is now being watched by Sheila, who stares, and so therefore she's open-eyed, and in more ways than one, that open-eyed look is her opening understanding of the man before her, seeing him in a way that she had not seen him before. The next occasion we have of someone moving in this manner is early in Act 3, when Eric, having been confronted with his family and the inspector on his return, and recognizing that he has to confess to what he has done, does exactly the same thing as Gerald. The direction we're looking at states, Eric goes for a whiskey. His whole manner of handling the decanter and then the drink shows his familiarity with quick, heavy drinking. The others watch him narrowly. What is interesting here is that Eric, like Gerald, a young man about town, but a man being trained by his father and influenced by their fathers, has chosen not to face head on the interrogation, but to rather shore himself up, to support himself with drink, escaping once again from the responsibility and accountability that he should have into the bottle. As opposed to one person watching him, as Sheila did with Gerald, he now has several people watching him. And as they watch, we're told that they do this narrowly. They, like Sheila with Gerald, are seeing in Eric something that they had not seen in him, but now recognize, and they recognize it and do not like it. The third movement of this type comes from Mr. Burling the Elder himself. And what we have is, towards the end of Act 3, after the inspector leaves, he is flustered. And we see in the stage direction written that he moves hesitantly towards the door, stops, looks gloomily at the other three, then pours himself out a drink which he hastily swallows. Mr. Burling the elder, although narrowly looking at Eric and seeming not to recognize what he saw, reveals with his movement what Eric has watched, observed, and followed suit with. He, like the men before him in this play, faced with a situation he cannot control, escapes in the bottle. What is Priestley attempting to tell us with these three very similar stage directions? That men of influence, men who had roles in which they could change the course of the lives of people, rather than face their responsibility, rather than be accountable, and rather than stand on their own 2 feet, often chose to escape from that accountability and responsibility. And on this occasion, he's used the bottle to explain that. But that is representative of the fact that they chose the wrong way to deal with what they had to. The play in itself is a microcosm, a representation of society, and every person in that play represented a faction or section of society that potentially was not operating as it should. And we have a clear example when we look at gender of the stereotypical manner in which men of influence chose to live out their duties, to do what they were supposed to do. We also, if you like, have an opportunity to view the family of society and how dysfunctionally they resorted or escaped to other means rather than the direct approach of dealing with any issues or problems, and hence pass that on generationally to those behind. And it is only with the intervention of the inspector in the lives of Eric and Gerald that we actually see that the cycle finally can be broken. Who does the inspector represent in this play? He represents the new thinking. He represents the socialist ideas. And so that, Priestley's saying, is what will break the cycle of the escape from responsibility, the escape from accountability. I hope that the way of looking at these dramatic devices, or some of these dramatic devices, has been useful, and you can use this in your writing. Thank you.